This is Sam, Trent, and James Curtis, and we have put together a little presentation to talk about structure charts and how we think that it could be a huge benefit to our project and why we think we should incorporate it and learn how to use them so that we can create a very high-level design that could help us in the long run develop a project that is very easy to develop and to implement.
Okay, let's talk about what exactly a structure chart is. A structure chart provides a basic graphical representation of a more complicated organization or process. At its core, the purpose of a structure chart is to provide a basic graphical representation of a more complicated organization or process. This approach involves breaking the program into a logical, manageable portions or modules. This kind of programming works well with top-down design because it emphasizes the interfaces between modules and does not neglect them until later in the system's development. A structure chart is very similar to a data flow diagram. It's derived from the DFD, and it represents the system in a much more detailed fashion than a DFD will do for you. It breaks down the entire system into the lowest functional modules, describes the functions and subfunctions of each module of the system to a greater detail than the DFD. In addition, the structure chart represents a hierarchical structure of modules. At each layer, a specific task is performed. A structure chart employs 6 important graphical elements, starting off with the modules. These represent a process or subroutine or task. A control module branches to more than one submodule. Library modules are reusable and invocable from any module. Then we have a condition. These are represented by small diamonds at the base of the module. This depicts the control module and can select any of the subroutine based on that condition. Then you have a jump. This is represented by an arrow pointing inside the module. It's very important that it doesn't stop above. It needs to go actually inside that rectangle. And this will depict that the control will jump in the middle of the submodule. Then you have a loop. This is represented by a curved arrow in the module or just below it. All submodules covered by a loop repeat execution of that given module. We then have the data flow. This is represented by a directed arrow with an empty circle at the end. This will depict the data flow. A control flow is very similar to the data flow, but the difference is that it has a closed circle. So this is represented by a directed arrow with a filled circle at the end and will depict the control flow. Okay, we have a real-world example here that will help us explain a little bit more. In the real world, some software engineers will usually use a structural chart to help educate new software and how it's operating, to explain to the team or how they want to depict their software. So here we have the calculate average function. This will have 2 inputs. It'll grab 2 numbers from the user and it'll prompt the user and have the information sent into the calculate average, but then calculate average will need to send it on to a function that'll do the mathematical calculations, and that's the average function. And then once it's calculated there, then that average, the result will be sent back up to the calculate average, and then the calculate average will send it out to the display function or the output average function here so that the user can see the result from this calculation.
A structure chart has a number of advantages that are associated with it that help make the development process of an application or of any project really much more easier than it normally would be. For example, a good structured chart can help a development team gauge and size the complexity of a system that they are developing. It helps give the programmers a bird's eye view of all the little intricate components of the program and how each one works. And it really helps give the programmers a good roadmap to follow during the development process. Along with this, it also helps the programmers number and identify many of the different functions and modules within them as well. It also helps identify whether a function is a manageable entity or it should be broken down into smaller components. So basically it helps development teams break down and really flesh out different parts of the program. It also helps make planning a lot easier. Things tend to go a lot more smoothly when a development team has a roadmap that they can follow that will help them and guide them through the development process, so that it's already been thought out in the long run. And it also helps development teams visualize milestones in the project as well. Along with the advantages, though, there are a number of disadvantages that a structure chart brings with it. First of which, a structure chart does not show the order in which the modules should be executed. So it doesn't give a really low-level description in that aspect of it. There is some more planning that needs to be done. Also, sometimes it doesn't show enough detail about the actual program. This can be a problem when you're working with really complex functions or modules and it doesn't provide enough detail or information to really be fleshed out or to be written all in one moment at that time. The structure chart also may not necessarily convey the milestones, and it may not show how much difficulty might go into each one of those. And also a structure chart could be potentially time-consuming to create. But despite all these things, we believe that a structure chart is a great system to use, especially when you're working with a very large and complex system. Like mentioned earlier, it just gives a really great bird's eye view, and it really helps the programmers demonstrate and teach to others what is happening within the system. And it helps managers assign specific tasks to different members in the team, and so that they have a really good idea of which component of the program that they're working on and how it relates to other aspects of the program as well. And it also helps create a clear development path and goals as well.